Hello, students. Professor Stevenson here with week 6 wrap up, and we are wrapping up this course pretty quickly. So, a couple of reminders for this week. You're starting with and beginning quintillion at the beginning of this week, and then at the end of the week, you have a final reflection due. Because it's on it's off our normal schedule. A few students sometimes forget to do that, and I want to make sure that you don't forget to do that. It's really important. It obviously helps with your grade. It's in lieu of a final exam for us, so make sure you do that. I have only a couple of days to turn around grades for this class, so my grading this week will be pretty hectic as well. The other thing I wanted to remind you to do is fill out the course evaluation. It really helps me to see how you all are responding to this course and the materials and the format. One of the things I'd like better feedback on is our online textbook, or not that we have an online textbook, but if you all would rather have bought a textbook for this class, I could look into that for future classes. It's not that difficult. It just is a really expensive option because classical rhetoric textbooks tend to be really expensive. So let me know what you think there. So let's get into this week. Cicero is really engaging to a lot of you, but he's also really difficult in this dialogue format. So some of you were able to slog through that and really find fruitful things there, and some of you on your last question were just like, this was immensely difficult. It's an immensely difficult first read, I will say, but I hope that you all will come back to it and find some treasure in there. So let's get into it. Whose perfect order do you prefer, and why? The class was kind of divided. I think more of you lean towards Crassus, but so I would say it's maybe 2/3 and 1/3, like 2/3 lean towards Crassus and 1/3 lean towards Antonius. Admittedly, Crassus is sort of Isocratean, Antonius is Aristotelian, and so a lot of you really valued the Crassus order because of his idealism, is, the stuff through Isocrates, being a civic leader, really valuing broad bases of knowledge, and let's see, Kelly has some great quotes here. Life and manners, form and polish in his speech, natural talent, every kind of merit, timidity, confusion, and shame, speaking to inspire, art from their eloquence, and engaged in repeated and significant practice geared towards improvement. So Crassus's ideal orator is definitely ideal, but it's very Isocratean. And then for those of you that ended up preferring Antonius, a lot of you said that it's just more practical. So let's see, Marie talks about Antonius makes a valid point that no special training is needed for Cicero's discourse of the 5 canons of rhetoric, which are invention, arrangement, style, memory, and delivery. He argues that these tasks are apparent but have no sufficient judgment. He asserts that anyone can learn these skills, and it is not necessary to master any subjects to be a great orator. So knowing the skills of oratory. But so Sarah has this great quote from there too. I cannot deny that every kind of knowledge is of advantage, especially to him whose eloquence ought to be adorned with a variety of matter, but the things which are absolutely necessary to an orator are numerous, important, and difficult, so that I would not distract his industry among too many studies. And so that's from Antonius. So again, I think you all fell along these lines because of the practicality of it. What other readings we've covered do you think De Oratore is in dialogue with? So Dustin has a really great answer. He talks about how Crassus expounds how oratory is to take back its original position and the pinnacle of wisdom after being stripped of its glory in Plato and the Gorgias, and there's no doubt that this is definitely in conversation with the Gorgias. Cicero would seem to believe that philosophers are imperfect in their grasp of wisdom for their inability to convey their ideas with eloquence and lack of practicality. On the other hand, the Antidosis conveys what I perceive Cicero himself wants to emplace. The orator is like Isocrates, rhetorician, one who is concerned with public affairs and uses their wisdom to that end. And so we can see this kind of as a rebuke of Plato, but also like how, like, there's a space for philosophy, which I'll get back to in a minute. But the question being, is there a space for rhetoric within philosophy? And absolutely. I think we see that in Cicero. So Janine says, in my limited knowledge and understanding in comparative rhetorics, I saw mostly Aristotle in Cicero's writings, Aristotle from the Techne feel of the book, specifically at the end of book 2, and in which Antonius and Crassus discuss some of the 5 canons. So there's definitely that. I feel like Cicero was being somewhat sarcastic about philosophy with the following comment, but not even the philosophers themselves, who would have everything as to their own right to be theirs and in their possession, have the confidence to say that geometry or music is part of philosophy, because all acknowledge Plato to have been intimately excited in those sciences. And yes, Cicero is definitely being snarky there. Yeah. And so Janine goes on to talk about how Cicero probably has, like, Cicero's orator here also thinks that he has more to offer society than Plato's philosopher. And Sarah also has a great answer too. She says that Cicero had great respects for these Greeks, but he strays here, which can be summed up here, which is this long quote from Cicero. As all knowledge in the best arts and sciences and all exercise in them was named philosophy, and he separated in his discussions the ability of thinking wisely and speaking gracefully, though they are naturally united. Socrates, I say, whose great genius in varied conversation Plato has in his dialogues consigned to immortality, he himself having left us nothing in writing. Hence arose that divorce, if it were, of the tongue from the heart, a division certainly absurd. Here Cicero is in direct contradiction with his predecessors, who believe that philosophy and rhetoric are separate arts. Plato feels that the practice of philosophy is the way to obtain truth, not rhetoric. In fact, to Plato, the rhetorician, quote, needs not know the truth about things. He has only to discover some way of persuading the ignorant that he has more knowledge. However, the main characters in De Oratore express the opposing view. Crassus believes that a perfect orator needs to have knowledge in all things to be convincing, whereas Antonius feels that although that is ideal, it is more realistic that the orator be as studied as possible. Furthermore, Aristotle argues that rhetoric is a tool to persuade audiences. However, let us remember Cicero's quote at the beginning of the paragraph. Cicero argues that, unlike the views of Plato and Aristotle, good rhetoric comes from someone who's studied, and that it would be ridiculous to separate rhetoric and philosophy. So yeah, we have a lot here. We have Isocratean, we have looking at both sides of a question, we have the sort of technical aspects of rhetoric with Aristotle. So it's this marrying of this stuff, and then this really deliberate exploration of the role of philosophy and rhetoric, which we'll get to in like 2 seconds, as we discuss the third question: where does knowledge come from? Susan says, Cicero specifically extols the virtue of wisdom to be gleaned from studying philosophy, which he hails as the parent of all arts, which merit praise. He praises men who seek wisdom by broad exploration of academic disciplines such as science, mathematics, music, literature, poetry, the art of speaking, which when mastered sets a few eloquent men apart from the masses. Lee has a good one here too. Knowledge in Cicero's De Oratore come from several places. Both Antonius and Crassus give credit to nature for certain inherent knowledge. No one has to be taught how to feel anger or how to recognize the appropriate timing for that of love or fear. The knowledge of these and how they can affect people is inherent in all people. The other consistent source of knowledge mentioned by all of Cicero's character is the knowledge that comes from the study of arts and law and other orders in their speeches and methods. The study of liberal arts is what cultivates and sharpens the knowledge given by nature. How best to use emotion in a speech, for example, is how best to use common physical gestures during a speech to perfect one's delivery. Knowledge is a combination of natural gifts and the study to perfect leverage those natural gifts. So this is not the easiest question at all. So knowledge is both received wisdom, right? You can receive this. You can be taught knowledge. So you can be acquired this. And then there is this idea that that persuasion can also help create knowledge. But one of the things we also get in Cicero is that knowledge is experiential and rooted in the community. So this is where kind of the sophist wisdom come in. So Brandy kind of talks about this. Crassus believed that true knowledge, if it came about when one finally recognizes how to use the learned information in a way that benefits both the teacher and the student. Quote, in every area, the capacity to do what is appropriate is a matter of art and natural ability, but to know what is appropriate at each time is a matter of intelligence. So there's a lot of ways to think about how this broad base of knowledge helps an orator really think about kairos and what appropriate timing is and how a rhetorician can use it to sway an audience, but not in a manipulative way, but definitely to sway an audience in a positive way. And so his idea is that we're going to link philosophy and rhetoric back together. That some kinds of truth do come from philosophy, but then there are others that need to be debated in society, and that communities can also there are truths that come from communities, so that Cicero, like, knowledge isn't top down in Cicero, and that philosophy has to kind of let go of some of that. But rhetoric can also help us better express philosophy. And then emotion. So let's go to the fourth question. Cicero's discussion of emotion is somewhat unique. What's striking about it? So Marie has this great answer. They are, quote, to inform your readers, to please them, and to move their passions. This implies that if a person shows emotions, it's a useful tool in helping persuade their audience to either sympathize with them, be angry about something, or be happy about a particular topic. Cicero believes that a perfect order possesses these qualities and is able to change their emotions accordingly. Gabriella has a pretty good answer, too. I was struck most by this statement, thus the proper concern of an order is language of power and elegance accommodated to feelings and understanding of mankind. Throughout the readings this semester, the concept of feelings or emotionally rarely came about as a positive idea. Aristotle hinted at it, particularly in the discussion or the connection between speaker and audience. No one spoke about the topic to the degree Cicero did in De Oratore. The very concept of power of voice is stressed heavily in this reading, while Scaevola believed that a good orator speaks judiciously. Crassus stressed that a good orator also employs emotion. Mankind make far more determinations through hatred, love, desire, or anger, Cicero argues. Human connection is found in the feelings and emotions and emotional side of things, and rhetoric does not reach its greatest potential without them. The orator himself must have an emotional side of him, evidenced in his soft tones of voice and modest expression, and calm, mild-mannered speech. Passion itself, a fierce emotional reality, can drive a speech or interaction like nothing else. Cicero continues to discuss emotion, going as far as to discuss two kinds of wit, 5 subjects worthy of consideration about laughter, 2 sorts of jokes, and many other strategies. I found this subject incredibly intriguing. I think Gabriella kind of hits on the nail on the head, is that emotion for Cicero is also like connected to truth in some way. It's involved in practical truth. So emotions are needed to move people into decisions, and they're things that are part of a community. So it grounds the discussion of emotion in a way that that kind of moves audiences, but not plastically, authentically. So like when a rhetorician feels something, right? It moves the audience because they're watching the rhetorician that way, or the orator. And that to some people feels very like, ugh, I don't know, like, am I being swayed inappropriately or whatever? And that I think we can blame on Aristotle and his legacy in the Enlightenment, where everything is the primacy of logos comes in there. But we do know through psychological research that to get people to act, you have to appeal to emotions. And like in ads, it sometimes feel, which this is political season, so we're seeing it all over the place right now. But to get people to move, that we have to appeal to emotion. And I think Cicero's being very ethical about it, but we can understand how modern rhetoric or modern advertisement has kind of taken that to the nth degree. Not a lot of really crazy questions. Many of you who got to the fifth question were like, please, I'm so sorry, this is so complicated. And I'm sorry that it was so complicated. It really is kind of a difficult piece to read the first time. But by the time the second or third time, or the multiple times you come back to it, if you ever get to, it really does open the door to so much more. And you really get to see Cicero at his finest. And there's some snarky stuff, there's some witty stuff. And so, but it definitely does take some time. So in the interest of time, I'm going to call it this week, but, yeah, I will be working furiously to wrap up all my grading, and you will be turning in your week 7 posts, your final reflection, and hopefully your course evaluations. So thank you for an amazing class so far, and I am very much looking forward to reading your posts on Quintilian.